In the space of 48 hours, Iran has threatened two countries that aren't even directly fighting it, the United Kingdom and Ukraine, one for lending an airbase, the other for a drone strike thousands of kilometers from the actual war. And buried inside both threats is something bigger, new evidence about how far Iran's missiles can actually fly, and whether Britain is now, for the first time, inside the blast radius. This is the story of how a war that started over Iran's nuclear program just pulled in two more countries, and what it's revealed about Tehran's real firepower. Let's start with RAF Fairford, a quiet airbase in Gloucestershire that most people in Britain had never heard of before this year. Since March, the UK government has allowed American B-1 and B-52 bombers to operate from Fairford, officially to strike Iranian missile sites before they can launch what London calls defensive operations. It's one of two UK-linked facilities the US has been permitted to use, along with the joint base on Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. For months, Iran mostly aimed its anger at Washington and Tel Aviv. That changed this week. After tracking a B-1 bomber leaving Fairford and heading toward Iranian airspace, Iran's Revolutionary Guard formally declared the base a legitimate target, accusing the UK of hosting the aircraft now that, in Iran's telling, the US has burned through much of its missile stockpile in the region and switched to heavy bomber runs instead. The UK's response was carefully worded. Officials didn't confirm or deny the specific mission, but insisted Britain maintains a layered air and missile defense, Navy, Army, and RAF systems working with NATO, and that the country is ready to defend itself, at home or abroad. That's the diplomatic version. The blunter version is this: a NATO country's home soil has just been named a target in a war it insists it isn't part of. The second threat came from an entirely different direction, the Caspian Sea. Ukraine's president said his forces carried out long-range strikes there, hitting what Kyiv described as vessels used to move military cargo between Iran and Russia, along with a warship. Iran tells it differently. Its foreign ministry says a commercial vessel was hit, that one sailor was killed and others injured, and it's calling the strike a violation of international law, carried out, in Tehran's words, on Israel's behalf, to drag Europe deeper into the conflict. Iran's foreign minister has gone further, saying the attack cannot go unanswered, and demanding the UN Security Council and European governments hold Ukraine accountable. Why does this matter beyond one ship? Because it ties three wars together that used to be separate: Iran's conflict with the US and Israel, Russia's war in Ukraine, and now a possible new front between Tehran and Kyiv. Ukraine has spent years accusing Iran of arming Russia with Shahed drones. Now Kyiv appears willing to hit Iran-linked shipping directly, even suggesting Russian satellites have been feeding Tehran targeting data on US bases in the Gulf. One former Iranian lawmaker put it bluntly: after this strike, Iran should reconsider the self-imposed 2,000-kilometer limit it's kept on its own missile range. Which brings us to the part of the story with the widest implications. Back in March, Iran fired two ballistic missiles at the joint UK-US base on Diego Garcia, in the middle of the Indian Ocean. One fell short. The other was intercepted by a US warship. Neither hit anything, but the distance is what set off alarm bells. Diego Garcia sits around 4,000 kilometers from Iran, roughly double the range analysts had assumed Iran's missiles could travel. If a missile can cover that distance, it can also reach London, Paris, or Berlin. Israel's military said it plainly: Iran now has weapons capable of hitting European capitals, and this proves the threat is global, not regional. UK ministers pushed back hard, saying there was no specific assessment that Iran is targeting or even capable of hitting Britain, and accusing the claim of being exaggerated to build support for the war. But even the ministers pushing back admitted something uncomfortable. Britain doesn't have a comprehensive missile defense shield of its own, the way Israel or the Gulf states do. Analysts have offered a middle ground read to actually double their range and hit UK targets from Iranian soil. These missiles would need a much lighter warhead. somewhere in the 450 to 550 kilogram range, instead of the roughly 1.5 ton payload they're built to carry. Possible on paper, but it likely means trading destructive power for reach, and it still assumes Iran's accuracy holds up at that distance, which, given that one of the two Diego Garcia missiles missed entirely, is very much in question. So put the two threats together, Fairford and the Caspian Sea attack, and you get the real headline. Iran isn't just angry at the US and Israel anymore, it's signaling that any country that helps them, however indirectly, is inside its reach. Whether that's true today or still theoretical is almost beside the point. The message is designed to make Britain and Ukraine feel like they now have skin in a war they tried to stay one step back from. So what has Iran actually been firing during this war, and how well has it worked? Iran's arsenal blends a few different tools, and the mix matters more than any single weapon. There are ballistic missiles for the heaviest blows, older medium range models plus longer reaching designs. There are cruise missiles, flying lower and slower, mainly used to clutter radar and stretch out an enemy's defenses rather than land the knockout blow. And there's a large, cheap fleet of one-way attack drones, the Shahed family, which Iran doesn't expect to all get through. Their job is to exhaust interceptors and air defense stockpiles so something else slips past. That flood the sky approach is exactly what's played out over Israel and the Gulf states. Layered defenses, Israel's Iron Dome and Arrow systems, Gulf Patriot and THAAD batteries have shot down the large majority of what's been launched at them. But when dozens of interceptions happen at once over a city, the debris from those intercepted missiles has to land somewhere, and in several cases it's still caused real damage and casualties on the ground, even when the intercept itself worked. The impact hasn't been even. Bigger, better defended states like the UAE have absorbed the barrage with limited damage. Smaller, more exposed ones, Bahrain especially, and to a lesser extent Kuwait and Qatar, have taken heavier hits, simply because there's less room and less layered defense to work with geographically. And partway through this war, Iran introduced something newer, the Khaibar Shekan, a solid fuel, medium range ballistic missile, roughly 10.5 meters long, about 5 tons at launch, carrying a warhead of around 500 kilograms, with a stated range near 1,450 kilometers. Its selling point isn't raw distance, its speed of preparation and its ability to maneuver in its final approach, making it harder to intercept than older designs, and letting Iran fire more of them faster. Put simply, this war hasn't shown Iran has a magic weapon that changes the outcome. It's shown a strategy of overwhelming volume, hoping enough gets through even after most of it is shot down. Take a step back, and here's where this leaves things. A truce that was supposed to end this war has effectively collapsed. Iran is now naming a British airbase as a target. It's promising to answer Ukraine over a ship in a sea most people couldn't find on a map. And the debate over whether its missiles can reach London has gone from impossible to unlikely but not ruled out in the space of a few months. None of that means an attack on Britain or Ukraine is imminent, but it does mean the list of countries with something to lose in this war just got longer. And the honest answer from officials on every side is that nobody is fully in control of where this goes next. If you want the full picture of how we got here, the strikes on Iran, the Red Sea tankers, the oil price spike, that's covered in the video linked on screen. Subscribe if you want the next update as soon as this moves.